Hello! So today we are going to take a look at the Builds A300-600 in Microsoft Flight Simulator and take it for a flight. The reason for me doing this is because I tried to use it on a group flight the other night, and obviously because I jump around airplanes so much, I'm often quite rusty at different airplanes. And the Builds A300 has had a huge update recently, so I thought we might go and delve into it a bit further than we have recently, and do not really a beginner's guide, but really go through things step by step and explain what we're doing along the way, and really validate that my checklist that I have revised is still correct and accurate and applies to the aircraft correctly, and kind of to distill some knowledge along the way that I've picked up as I've been experimenting with the aircraft, because it's quite markedly different than anything else in the simulator, other than maybe the A310, which is a little bit different, but the A300 is kind of unique in its own regard. Okay, so we're going to go inside the airplane to begin with. Now, when you first install the A300-600, if we use the predefined views, so if I hold the control key down on the keyboard and press 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, you can see they're really random and they're really not of much use. So if we come back to the pilot position with the F key, I have predefined some custom views. So you can do this by holding Control and Alt down and then pressing a number when you've got the view where you want it, so you can like move the view around and then, you know, save views as you are happy with them around the cockpit. So if I hold the Alt key down and use the number keys, I get my views. So Alt and 1 will show me the overhead panel. Alt and 2 will show me the eyebrow panel, as some people call it, so the lower overhead. Alt and 3 will show me the FGCP. Alt and 4 shows me the MCDU. Alt and 5 shows me the back of the pedestal, and Alt and 6 shows me the tablet. And that's all I've defined, because those are the views I need to quickly get to various things as we're talking our way around starting the airplane up on the ground. Okay, so let's go and have a look at where we're flying today. So I have gone and programmed my flight into little nav map. I kind of sketched out a flight that just includes a SID and a star and some airways, purely so we've got, you know, a nice story to tell when we program the MCDU. And then I've taken that over to Navigraph as well and just copied it in. So you can see there it is up at the top of the screen, the text version of it. And if we go into SimBrief, I haven't actually programmed it yet. I thought this might be of interest for people to see how this is done. So I've gone into SimBrief. I've gone into, well, let's do the whole story. Go to SimBrief. Go to Create a New Flight. Put in a flight details, so VFL123. And we are departing from KSJC. We can see that on the origin in Navigraph. So KSJC. And we are going to KLAS. KLAS. Okay. So aircraft type, we are going to select a close relative, where is it? The A600. Where it should be on the list somewhere. A300-600. There it is. Yeah. Okay, and then we can look down here. We can put a cost index in. It will calculate it for us, but we're going to force it to go to 100, so we get quite a lot of power on the engines. And we scroll down. We can choose an altitude. Now we're going east, so the mnemonic is east is odd, west is even odder, which means if we're going east, we need an odd altitude number, so 35,000 feet. It's just a convention. It's not a rule. We can leave everything else as red, and then we'll go and paste in the route that we had in Navigraph. So we're just going to go and borrow it. So we're going to go to text mode up here, copy that and say done. We're not actually going to change it in Navigraph. Come back in SimBrief. So rather than use the route it wants to use, we're going to use our route, and we'll analyze the routes, and it says the route is valid, and you can see it sketched in there, and we can generate the flight. So this will make our operational flight plan, and then we can pull that into the airplane if we wish to. We're not actually going to. Well, we will on the tablet, but not in the MCDU, because there's some interest there in programming the MCDU. Okay, so back in the airplane. First things first then, Alt and 1 will take us overhead using my custom key bindings, and we go to the batteries and we turn them on. Then we look to see if external power is available, and it is. So we'll switch it on. Then we can press Alt and 2 to come down, and we can go and turn the APU master switch on and start the APU. Then we can go back further overhead and we can go and turn on the INS system. That's the inertial navigation system. So the three nav systems there, and they're in align mode. Yeah, so you can see they're all saying align mode at the moment. Okay, so then we come down to the MCDU, so Alt 4 will take us there. And we need to program the basics of our route, because it's saying align IRS at the moment, but you can't do that until you've put the route in. So we're going from KSJC to KLAS. So KSJC to KLAS. Notice it's still saying that. We've actually typed it in underneath the message, so I'll clear the message out of the way. KSJC to KLAS. And return. And now we've put that in, you can see Align IRS has appeared, so we can select Align IRS. And if we go and look overhead again now, I think I've got this on, yeah, I've got this on instant alignment to save us some time in the flight, otherwise we might end up sat here for 5 or 6 minutes waiting for it. So the instant alignment is in the tablet, but we won't get to that just yet. It's just in the settings of the aircraft. Okay, so cost index 100. Again, look, it's just notifying us that the GPS is already aligned and it's upgraded our positioning, which is fine. So I've typed in 100. That goes in the cost index. Cruise flight level was 350. That's flight levels are divided by 100 basically. So if it's 35,000 feet, one flight level is 1,000 feet. And flight ID VFL123. Drop that in. So then we can go to the next page and we can put in our block of fuel. So before we do that, let's go over to the tablet. So if we go into my flight, I can import this from SimBrief. You can see it's pulled in the details of the flight. And then we can go into not ground equip, tell a lie, weight and balance. And we can update this from SimBrief. So that pulls in the numbers that the aeroplane should have according to the flight plan, and then we can apply that to the aeroplane, so it will go and put the payload and the fuel in to match, which means that the centre of gravity figures have updated, which is really important. Okay, so having done that, we can now go and just pre-select these, and if we, on the zero fuel weight and the block, if you select them, if they are empty, they will fill in with what the aeroplane has. And then obviously once you've got the block and the zero fuel weight, you can get the takeoff gross weight. And then we want the centre of gravity. It won't pre-calculate this for you, so we need to nip back over to the tablet with Alt 6 and get the centre of gravity, which is 28.4. Oops, let's keep that 28.4. Let's go to the scratch pad there, drop that into centre of gravity. Okay. So that's the basic initialization done. We now need to go and do the takeoff and approach parameters. So we want the numbers for takeoff. So if we go Alt 6 again, there's an app on the tablet for this, the performance app. So if we click sync, it will get the data we've got so far. And then if we click calculate, it knows, because obviously it knows where we're taking off from, and it can go 150, 150. Okay, so Alt 4, so 150. It'll be interesting actually, let's just try something. I'll put these numbers in, just for the moment. So we haven't actually said what runways we're using yet. I'm just wondering if the takeoff calculator understands that. Let's go and have a look at this again. So it does know the runways. So, but we haven't specified them yet, although they are in the SimBrief plan, so maybe that's clever enough to know that. So let's go and have a look. So if we go to the flight plan page and go to KSJC, we can put in our actual departure. So if we go and have a look on Navigraph, we're taking off runway 30 right using the Sunol 1 departure with the Lynn transition. So 30 right, Sunol 1 and the Lynn transition. Insert. So I'm just wondering if we go to those takeoff parameters again and we go and have a look. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing now. If we go back and have a look in here, if we click say sync again, it hasn't really changed, look. But this is using the wrong runway, so this was wired up incorrectly. So we know we're using runway 30 right. I don't think it's going to change it, but it's just something to be mindful of. So runway updated. And if we calculate, yeah, this doesn't really take it into account, you know, the length of the runway. I just wondered if it would. Okay, so let's go and have another quick look. So the numbers are still the same. It's all good. We can leave the approach and everything alone for the moment. That's all fine. Okay, so we come back to the flight plan page and we can scroll down and we can see this takes us as far as Lynn. So if we look on our flight plan here, we get to Lynn. So if we go and pull up the text version of this, after Lynn we want to take J85 to Babbitt. So we go and select Lynn and we can say an airway and it should say J84. That's interesting. Oh, J84, sorry, I said 85, didn't I? J84 to Babbitt. J84 to Babbitt. So that's inserted that next part of the route as far as Babbitt. Then we want to take J92 to BTY. So if we select Babbitt, we can say airway, J92 to, no, it's not on the list yet, so let's scroll down. Is it BTY? Yeah, BTY, there it is. And then, so if we carry on down, we've got BTY there. So then we want the JSIN2. So we've finished the routing basically. So we can go to KLAS and select it, and we can go and put the star on. So we want the JSIN2 star. So let's put the runway in first actually. So we've got 01 left with the Roman. So INS 01 left. And if we have a look through, there's JSIN2. And was it Roman N? Yes. Okay, and which transition was it? Did we actually have a transition? Birdie is that one. Yep. And insert it. Okay, so we've now got pretty much the whole route. Let's see if there's any discontinuity still in here. There is. So we can just clear that out. The reason there's a discontinuity is there's actually some manual navigation between the end of using an airway and joining the beginning of the standard terminal arrival route. So there's actually a piece of own navigation essentially. But we'll just clear that out because we're going to go direct between there, so it's not really going to hurt us. Okay. And let's just scroll through just to double check. And that all looks absolutely fine. Okay, so we've done the flight plan. What's next on our list of things to do? So Alt and 1 takes us overhead and we can go and turn on the flight recorder. So then Alt and 2 will bring us further down and we can turn on the seatbelt signs and put the no smoking to auto. We can go and turn on the strobe lights to auto and the nav and logo lights to 1. And then we can go and turn on the pitch, trim, yaw dampers and ATS switches. If the INS system has not aligned, obviously we had on instant alignment. If it hasn't, you'll have problems flicking these switches on. So that's a really good indicator. If you can't switch these on, it means you haven't done the INS, or there's a problem with it. Okay, so the window heaters can go to on, the probe heats can go to on, the flight guidance computer panel, FGCP, we're going to look at next, which is the main control panel for the autopilot. And we're going to go and set the DH to on. We're going to roll this knob backwards to set the decision height to -5, ready for takeoff. And then we're going to go back to the primary instrument panel by pressing F. And we're going to press B to shortcut setting the barometric pressure. There's 3 altimeters, one here, a standby one, and the co-pilot one over there. So when you're setting this back to 2992 when we're climbing out, you have to do it kind of manually and go and roll the knobs, but it's not a big deal. Okay, we have to uncage the backup attitude indicator over there. And we'll go and set the landing elevation, which is kind of hidden underneath this panel over here. So we've got landing elevation. So let's go and check that in little nav map. Just so if we go and pull up the information on McCarran International, you can see 2,200 feet thereabouts. So we want 22 on here. So just roll the mouse on it to get 22 to come up. It's done. Okay, so then we go back overhead, and we're going to turn the external power off, because, well, you really need to check that the APU is running. The easiest way to do that is go and click on APU on the ECAM buttons down here, and this screen down here will tell you if APU is generating, and it is. So we can come back overhead and we can turn off the external power. Then we can go down to the tablet, come back to the ground equipment and disconnect the ground power unit from the aircraft. Okay, so then we go Alt-2, and we're really preparing to get to engine start now. So the beacon light comes on, the fuel pumps all come on. The APU bleed can go on, so if you do this, this line will turn horizontal, meaning the bleed, you'll hear the noise. Yeah, so that means the compressed air has been rerouted to the engines to spin them up. And we can do pushback at this point. Next thing would be to start the engines, but we are going to need to push back. I'm not going to do anything complicated here, I'm just going to press Shift and P. And you'll see the truck start to align to push us backwards. So as soon as the truck has aligned, there are some nice toys in the A300 for doing pushback. So if you go into ground equip, I believe it is, yeah, you've got some nice options there for steering the tug. We'll see if they work just on a normal Shift P pushback. Waiting for the truck to align with the aircraft. There we go. So we can come off the parking brake. So which way do we actually want to be going? Let's go and have a look at the airfield. So we're taking off this way, so we want the tail to go left. So let's go left, and it's doing it. Very good. Okay, so while that's happening, we can get ready with engine start. So what we do is put the ignition system to system A, and we open the valve on start 2. And we start watching the N2 number climb. That's the compressor speed, basically. When it gets to 20, we can advance. We're going to have to stop this pushback before we do anything else, so stop. So when that goes through 20%, we can advance the fuel condition lever for the engine, or the start lever. I will put the parking brake back on. Now it has the, so I'll press Shift P, and that should release the truck from us. Is it going to? Is he going to say goodbye? It's got confused, look, because there's two trucks. Okay, so the click you just heard, yeah, that's gone back to arm up here, so we can start the other engine. So the click you heard was the power being switched across automatically to the engine. So we've opened the valve on engine number 1, and you can see the N2 number is climbing on engine number 1. When it gets to 20%, we can advance the fuel switch, start switch. Hear that engine coming up as well in the background, and obviously you can monitor as well when this switch goes back to arm. We can switch the ignition back to off overhead. There we go, so ignition can come off. So first things first then, we're going to turn the APU bleed back off. We don't need it anymore, and we can actually turn the APU off because power generation has now switched over completely to the engines. So APU off. So back in the cockpit, we can arm the ground spoilers. We can set the flaps for takeoff, 15 degrees. So the ground spoilers, essentially what will happen if you go to the brakes while you're on the runway, all of the spoilers will come up to their maximum extent along the wing. That's all it really does, it's just preparing the hydraulics so they'll come up very quickly. So it's going to start rolling. Oh, we need the taxi light, don't we? So, let's do things properly, hey, let's follow my own checklist, hey? So, taxi lights on, and then while we are taxiing now, so start taxiing again, we are going to go and prepare some of the parameters on the FGCP. So the runway direction is 306 degrees, so we'll go and set that. And the initial climb altitude, let's have a quick look at our flight plan. We want to go to 5,000 feet. And we could say we're going to be in nav mode. You can't select nav mode unless you've got a completed flight plan and the INS system is aligned, so that's worth knowing about. Just going to come off the throttle as we're going a little bit quickly. And we could say we're going to do level change to get off the runway. We could also prepare to put the auto throttle on. It's interesting that it's not letting me set speed immediately. We'll get to that. Because there's an element of this aeroplane that hasn't been implemented yet. You should be able to, if you click the top half of the speed on the FGCP, you can see it lights up with preset, and you can set a speed, but I don't think it's been implemented yet. So we're just going to cross the other runway. Obviously we've got no ATC, so we haven't got a problem. But that's interesting that if we put this away from that, I wonder if it'll do it if we go to takeoff level change. This is in takeoff mode, by the way, so that's something else to check. You can put this in auto. It's in takeoff mode by default. You've got the various modes of the engine management system here, like tow goes, takeoff, go around, maximum continuous thrust, climb and cruise. So let's just go out to the holding point for 30 left. We get off the middle of this runway, shall we? Yeah, that's interesting. There's a few things in this aeroplane that are a little bit odd from time to time. In previous tests, I've been able to dial in the initial speed. So what this really comes down to, normally you'd expect to see this come up when you're in profile mode, in which case the aeroplane is going to track its speed completely automatically. Anyway, so let's just check. We've done the initial climb altitude, we've done the nav mode. So next thing we're going to do is go up here and turn the landing lights to on. Strobe is on auto. So let's go and line up on the runway. We can also go and set the TCAS to TARA. Let's put the head tracking on and center it up. So you can see we've actually come onto the runway before the markings for the beginning of the runway. So we could obviously we could taxi forwards to do it all ultra correctly, or we could go from here. So let's go and turn off the air tracking for a moment, arrange our view so you can see things happen. Okay, so I'm just going to accelerate from here. So easing the throttles forwards to max. So that's the toga setting essentially. The airplane's accelerating. You'll see the markers on the indicated airspeed ribbon. Rotation, and we're in the air, and stabilize the aircraft, put the auto throttle on, we can also go for profile mode pretty quickly. We'll wait until it stabilizes the turn. So I'm leaving the flaps, just looking at the speeds here to regulate when I control the flaps. We can also go and clear the ECAM. Except it's staying on APU, that might be another strange thing about the aeroplane. It shouldn't really be showing that at the moment. Anyway. So we can go to profile mode as well. Profile mode means the aeroplane will follow the vertical instructions and speeds on the... So like it's accelerating for 250 knots, so we need to raise those flaps. We're now fast enough to do so. So yeah, profile mode means the aircraft's going to follow the altitudes and speeds that are programmed into the FMC. But it will only do so to get to the target altitude. Does that make sense? So we can now follow this. We need to be at 5,000 feet until we pass Sunol, at which point we go to our cruise altitude. It's quite cool around here, isn't it? Should we have a look from outside? These masts are very high, aren't they? Okay, so we can see we have the landing lights extended and the seat belts on. We don't switch off the landing lights until we go through 10,000 feet above sea level, and we leave the seatbelt signs on until cruise. So we're just going to sit here for the moment. Oh, the sim's just frozen. Give it a moment. There it goes. So did the undercarriage actually go up properly? Yes, it did. So I've got a problem here with my controllers in that the switch is a three-way switch in the A300 for the undercarriage. So this is by luck, this has put itself back into the middle. If you have configured your switches to push this all the way forwards to retract the gear, once the gear is retracted fully, you need to put it back into the middle. In the real aircraft, that was obviously you would be pressurizing the cylinders otherwise the entire time, so putting it into the middle reduces the wear and tear on the hydraulics. You know, so once they're up and locked, the system can be dormant essentially. Okay, so we can increase the range on the... Once we go past Sunol, we can start climbing, remember? So this is joining the airway essentially, or sorry, the standard instrument departure out to the airway. So we're going to go and take this out to 35, and we can say profile and watch what happens. So it's going to increase in speed. Once it goes through 10,000, it'll do it on its own. But it is climbing already, look. So the throttle's going forwards all on their own using the auto throttle. So it's following the altitudes and speeds. So it will increase out to try to get to Mach 0.82 at 35,000 feet on the way to the Lynn waypoint. So if we extend the range on here, we can see Lynn. It's about 50 miles out in front of us. So that's the target altitude. It doesn't mean we'll get to it for those waypoints. It's going to take a little while, obviously, to climb to altitude. But you can see it's not holding the speed wonderfully. It's gone out to 355 knots. Sorry, 255 knots. That would be a big mistake if it was at 355. But see, I've noticed that it's not great at holding airspeed using the auto throttle. Something else that's not obvious, the FGCP doesn't work the same as the A320, so it doesn't have the push-pull function that the A320 has. So if you click the top half of the altitude selector, it will go into hundreds. If you click it again, it will come back to thousands. Yes, that's just worth knowing about. But you can click the bottom half, which I gather means selecting the altitude. So we can align the heading bug with the direction we're going. So if we go shift and just turn it round, you can see a small blue marker on the compass rose there. If you wanted to do a gross check of the flight plan now, we're kind of... Oh, we haven't put this into climb mode yet. Oh, it's gone to auto. That's interesting. Because we didn't put it into climb mode. So I think possibly profile mode has done that for us. That's fascinating. I didn't know that. Isn't it interesting how you learn new things every time you get in an aeroplane? So we come through 10,000 feet a few moments ago. So the landing lights can be retracted. So our next point of interest will be at 18,000 feet when we reset the barometric pressures to standard barometric pressure, which is 2992 inches or 1013 millibars or hectopascals. So have we forgotten anything else? The nose light can come back off. Oh, it's stim's frozen again. Oh, it's just a mouse, sorry. There we go. Nose light can come off. Just doing a check round really to see what we need to do around the aeroplane. We're looking good. So you can see aeroplane's accelerated out and it's now climbing quite happily, following the flight plan. So it's estimating we're going to get to the top of climb in about another 60 miles or so. It'd be interesting to look on little nav map because that's got the elevation plot, and you can see I've only got the performance file in here for the A320. It'd be interesting to see how this compares. Obviously we're doing step climb, but yeah, it's going to probably be a lot further down the track, but then little nav map's not very good at estimating this anyway. It kind of generalises. Most climb profiles tend to be kind of a smooth parabola as they get closer to the target altitude. Okay, we're looking good. So I'll just take us up through the transition altitude and switch the barometric pressures over, and then I'll pause recording until we're getting close to top of descent, because it's very boring to sit in the middle of the flight not doing anything. It's quite interesting, just while we're wasting a bit of time here, it's good that you get independent systems on the A300, so you can leave, for example, the progress page on over here if you wanted to. Yeah, and leave your flight plan page on this side, so you can be doing independent things. And the same goes for the navigation displays, so you can configure them independently, which is really useful sometimes. Okay, so we're just coming up towards 18,000. So let's go and start reconfiguring these. So 2992 we want on the inches. 2992, that's the pilot's one. There's the backup one, so 2992. And then on the co-pilot, 2992. It might actually make sense to have a custom view that's the co-pilot seat. It would be easy to do it, wouldn't it? You could just do that, or maybe put the yoke right in the middle, and then press Control Alt 7 maybe. So say I'm over here, if I press Alt and 7 now, I can come straight over to the co-pilot side. It's quite a useful key to have maybe. So you could fly from the co-pilot seat if you wanted to. Okay, so I'm going to go and let the passengers get up and go to the toilet, so turn the seatbelt sign off. We're still climbing, but it's not so bad. So the next point of interest for me will be to switch over to cruise mode on the engines when we get to our target altitude. But it'd be interesting to see if that happens. I'll keep an eye on it. Although it's saying here, look, we're in icing range. So if you do think that's going to become a factor, you can always go and turn the anti-ice systems on. And you'll get obviously you get the annunciation down here that the systems are on, just to remind you. So let's just go and have a little look outside. Have we got any ice forming? I don't think so. Obviously you've got wing lights for this very reason. So, although you can't see it from here. Okay, so I'm going to pause recording at this point and take it up to altitude and then wait until we get to the other end of the route. So you can see the route is going to take a little while. We're just climbing out to the end of the SID, joining the airway at Lynn. And then I guess on approach, as soon as we get near the top of descent, so where does map think top of descent is going to be? Yeah, pretty much, if we zoom out, you can see it highlighted. So if we move this, look, you can see the circle moving on the map. So pretty much on approach into the BTY, or BT, vortex. Okay, so halfway between LIDAT and BT, I'll unpause the recording. Okay, I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, so we're just approaching top of descent. If we go and have a look, we just passed through it actually. So what we're going to do is we're still in profile mode, so we're going to tell the aeroplane we're going to go straight for the ground essentially. So if we just select that target altitude, we can obviously help the aeroplane descend more quickly if we need to by using the spoilers. So we'll allow that to happen. We'll also go and tell the passengers to put their seatbelts back on. It's interesting actually. I'd realised there was something missing from my notes, that I should have been in TA mode on takeoff and then TARA during climb for the TCAS. Also, I noticed something about the oh my word, I've completely forgotten what I noticed about the FGCP. It'll come back to me in a moment. Sorry, I've been distracted, which is why I missed top of climb, so the real world got in the way. So you can see we have a vertical deviation which shows we are above where we should be, which is why I'm using the spoilers at the moment. So we can extend the spoilers further, and that vertical deviation will come back in to show that the profile is catching up. So we're descending very, very steeply at the moment because we've got spoilers out complete, so if we show outside, there are the spoilers, allowing us to descend more quickly than we otherwise would. We're in the icing range again, so we're going to go and put the anti-ice systems on. So the aeroplane's playing catch up at the moment. It's higher than it should be. So it's aiming to get down to flight level 251 for the birdie, which is here. We've got below that, so here comes the vertical deviation, look, so we can come off the spoilers now. So the nose should come up, you can see that's gently happening, and it's trying to match the vertical deviation, so we're now back on plan after doing a bit of a Stuka dive. So that's a really good illustration of what you can do to dive steeply if you need to, is put the spoilers out. You often see it when you're on commercial flights. They'll try to stay at altitude as long as they can because it's faster and cheaper, because engines run more efficiently at altitude. And obviously, if you're quite often with a commercial flight, you'll be late leaving the gate for whatever reason, so they'll be always trying to chase time to make up time. So you can see the vertical deviations back in the middle, and we're in profile mode, remember, so the aeroplane is trying to follow this plan for the descent. So although we have told it to come down to 4,000 feet, it's not going to get there because it's got various steps along the way. So if we go and look at the standard terminal arrival route, we've got to be below 190, above 15,000, below 12, between 11 and 10. So yeah, so the profile will be following all of this for us automatically. And obviously steering is happening via nav mode following the GPS flight plan. So let's go and have a little look ahead and find out, obviously we're in America, so 180 we've just gone through, so we need to find out the barometric pressure of the destination airport now. So let's go and pull up the airport and go to the weather, and we can see it's 3000 or 1015 hectopascals. So we want 30. There's 30. There's 30. And on the co-pilot side, 30. Right on the limits of our vision over there. Okay, so we're good on the barometric pressure now. We don't have icing anymore, so we can go and turn off the anti-ice systems. Or at least we don't think we do. So we need to go and look up the ILS. So let's go and have a look at the approach plate. So we've got 110.1, 14 degrees for the ILS. So down here, we've got the course for the ILS. It's going to be 14. And 110.10. So the ILS is now tuned in, so when we make it around the rest of the route, we'll be good to go. So the airplane should manage its acceleration, or sorry, its deceleration automatically. We can actually go and set that decision height as well now, so we'll just put it to 0. It's fine. I'll get into that on another recording about what all these numbers actually mean and how they impact the aeroplane. The sim appears to have frozen, which is really useful. And it's just woken back up. I've never figured out what causes that. It's very strange. So it's interesting to watch this vertical deviation ladder to see where the aeroplane is in relation to the guide, and if it follows it or if it loses it, to be honest. So it's still descending, but it's actually falling behind the projected flight path. We're back in icing range, so let's go and put the, obviously it's because we're getting near the clouds. It's very cool the simulator does that, isn't it? That it has the kind of the three-dimensional element to the atmosphere. So notice this went into cruise mode automatically. So this switched to auto, which was a bit of a mystery to me of why it did that, because I didn't set it to auto initially. Anyway. Yeah, I noticed something about this on the climb out and I should have written it down. It's like I mentioned earlier, I learn things about these aeroplanes every time I get in them. New things that are not in the documentation. Obviously the A300 didn't really come with much documentation. Certainly not, you know, a pilot operating handbook or anything like that. So quite often we find ourselves delving around, trying switches out to figure out how they influence the aeroplane. So you can see why we have this quite strict guidance on heights, where we should be above or below particular points, because there are mountains in our way. So we're just above the projected flight path at the moment, but that does mean we are going to skim these mountains. That's actually scaring me quite a lot. They look remarkably close. Let's have a look at that approach. Arrival plate. So we want to be above 15,000. We're at 15,000. That's really pushing it, isn't it? It's climbing. Does it know something we don't? I'm not sure if this aeroplane has a radar altimeter. I wouldn't have thought it does, but we'll know because it will come up if it does when the ground gets close beneath us. I think it just has barometric pressure altimeters. Okay, so we're doing this right turn, which is quite nice because that means we're going to have a look from outside, see just how close we are. Maybe it's not as close as we thought. We've got at least about 1,000 feet there of separation from the mountains, which is what you'd be hoping to see. Very cool though, isn't it? What a nice route into Las Vegas. It's coming right over the top of the mountains and then drop down in. So obviously now we're past the mountains, you can see the profile mode is descending again. It's actually lost the plot though. So whether that means it just can't because it was trying to decelerate, should we help it? Let's put the spoilers back out and let it descend more quickly to get back onto that vertical plan. So we're watching the ladder here. Spoilers are extended, although we've held at 14,200. Why is that? Okay, it's in the flight plan, so there's no point using the spoilers at the moment. So that's for this restriction here, look, above 14,200 and then below 12. So once we get past here, we should be able to descend down to 12,000 feet quite smartly. Okay, let's go full spoilers. So I wonder if the vertical deviation ladder doesn't take into account the various holds on the route and it's doing a straight line calculation. It'd be interesting to see, wouldn't it? The trouble is, without documentation it's difficult to know how it calculates what it displays. Obviously the real world pilots have the advantage if they've done ground school for months. And they know what is being interpreted on the screens and how to interpret what they are showing, or what they are reading, sorry. Here we go, the vertical deviation is coming back to us, which is good. Let's start zooming in on the display here. So we're coming down to 250 knots as we get closer to 10,000 feet, so the lights will need to come on as we come through 10, but we've got a few moments yet. So it's decelerating at the moment. Should look outside while we have a few moments. Not really much of a view, is there? Here the engine's coming back up to stop our deceleration to match speeds at 250. 10,900 and descending. We don't need the anti-ice on anymore. And we're looking good. Okay, so we're still descending, we're just coming through 10,000 feet, so we're going to go and put the landing lights on. So we're holding at 10 at the moment. Lumi is 108, 110, 110. It's interesting, we're going to stay up at this altitude until Roman, which is right the way around this corner, so we're staying at this height for a little while. Yeah, so that does point towards that the vertical deviation is a straight line towards the runway in terms of, the vertical path, because it doesn't understand we're being held at an altitude. Look, it's gone below us. Obviously, once we get to Roman, well, they're saying 8,000. That doesn't agree with this, does it? Oh, it does. Flight level 080. That's good. It's interesting that this is listing this all in flight levels. rather than thousands of feet. It was always my understanding that flight levels are only used above the transition altitude. I guess in the interest of fitting the numbers onto the screen, it's putting flight levels on the MCDU. And this is why those altitude restrictions are in effect. You can see there's significant hills. If you look on little nav map, we'll actually be able to see them on the plot here. We've got the terrain plot from Google on display in little nav map. Okay, so we're making the turn. It's an interesting route, isn't it? Especially with some cloud cover, because it really does show you how dangerous this could be if you were not at the prescribed altitudes. It's fascinating. It's a really good example actually for all sorts of reasons. Oh yes, one of the things I was going to mention earlier that I noticed, just as a really tiny thing, but we had this on APU mode earlier while we were looking at the ECAM screen, and I noticed earlier I clicked clear and nothing happened. It appears to work differently than other aircraft, so you actually have to go and hit APU again, and that does the same as clear, so it appears the clear button either works differently in the A300 or it hasn't been implemented. So when you have no mode lit up here, it goes into the automatic mode of showing you the most pertinent information for the phase of flight. Yeah, that was the main thing I was trying to think of a few moments ago when I said I wanted to tell you something. I couldn't remember what it was. Okay, so let's just keep an eye on this. So we're looking to get to 8,000 feet at Roman, and we're descending as we speak, 500 feet to go. We are decelerating, so we can start to put the flaps out. So flaps are travelling. Slats are coming out as well. There we go, that's the next stage of flaps. See the runway coming out there. We go down to 15 miles now. We could actually switch the display over to ILS now, and we can see we've got the localizer showing up. Glide slope hasn't appeared yet, it wants more drag, so I'm going to give it more. The localizer for the centre line on the ILS. We haven't got the glide slope yet. Probably a bit too far out to be seeing it. So airplane should turn left anytime soon. And there it goes. Should we line the heading bug up with the direction of the runway, just in case we do have to do a go around for any reason. Spoilers off. Next stage of flaps. And we have the glide slope. And we can go to land mode because we are below the glide slope, and we can turn on both autopilots. It wants more drag. We can give it that through more flaps actually. So we're going to go to full flaps now, and there they come. And it's saying the gear is not down. I kind of did that on purpose to show you that happens. So we're going to go and extend the gear. Whoa! My controls have just caused havoc. There we go. So gear is coming down. Shall we have a look at the animation? Very cool. And go for full flaps now. So you can't use full flaps without the gear. I think it's always interesting to know those connective systems of what causes what. And quite often, if I'm flying, without recording, I'll be trying all sorts of things out to see what happens if. It always fascinates me. Okay, so at this point we are about 10 miles away. Landing lights are extended. So to prevent any accidents, quite often you'll see the commercial pilots switch to just TA mode on the TCAS when they're on finals, so if anything gets near them, the plane won't react. So if you have a modern, I'm not sure if it would in an A300, but if you have a modern airliner, it could deviate, it could suddenly start climbing if there's an aeroplane detected nearby. Okay, so we're going to take it off of automatic now and fly it ourselves. So auto throttle off. So the warning will go off. Let's just center our view up. And all we're looking at now is the various markers and the speed. So you can see we're going below the glide slope, so I'm just going to lift the nose to lift us back onto it. Just the thrust to stop us slowing down too quickly. So don't do anything in a hurry. It's quite a still day, so we're not being thrown around at all. I've not flown into Las Vegas for a long time. So you can see we're just drifting off to the right. We're still a little bit below the glide slope. So we're just watching these two markers and the speed. I always land manually if I am able, if it's good visibility, there's no excuse. And it gives you good practice and keeps your skills up. I don't tend to trim on approach either. I'll just hold the controls in the appropriate place. I know some people try and fly their airplane on trim on approach, and it's real pilots, I've heard them say it's a mistake, you shouldn't do it. So I'd never usually trim on approach for that very reason. So just small corrections, not really chasing as such, just guiding. Just lose a little bit of speed. A bit low. Raise the nose for a moment. Go back onto the... You can see the PAPI lights are saying we're low as well. It's nice to see everything agreeing for a change. Yeah, we're coming in a little bit low, but it's not really a big problem. Interesting. So we can go for reverses. Once we get down to about 100 knots, go for brakes as well. So it's a bit of a heavy landing. I got distracted, to be honest, looking at other things that were going on. Which again is just being rusty with the aeroplane. Obviously, the more you practice with an aeroplane, the more you expect things, and the less surprises and the smoother things become. So we're going to go long. Okay, so just coming off the runway here. So our initial concerns are to get the landing lights back off. The strobes are on auto, so we don't need to worry about them. And we can taxi out. So obviously then you'd be talking to the ground and getting taxi instructions. And on approach, obviously you would have been given instruction to exit left or right. So we've just exited to the nearest available exit, which wouldn't happen in the real world. You'd be given very specific instructions. Yeah, that was good fun. As I said earlier, every single time I get in one of these aeroplanes, it's a learning experience all over again. Partly because I fly so many different aeroplanes in the simulator, but partly because there's always something new to learn. And you'll notice some wrinkle or detail that you've not seen before. So we can, interesting, can we push that back down? Is it going to let us? Again, there's another wrinkle here, look, this is not letting me, I was doing it now, it wasn't letting me cancel the spoilers there. Okay, so I don't think there's much more to learn other than just taxiing back today. But you got a good appreciation there of some of the systems on the A300, verified that my checklist is broadly correct, which is the main aim of today really. And I think I'll leave you there. So obviously we can taxi back and we could go back over towards the terminals, follow ground instructions across the runways and all the rest of it. But I don't think we're going to bother. So anyway, I'll see you all again soon. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I'll put a link in the notes of the video for the checklist. Okay, see you soon. Take care.